Hello dear colonists, I hope you're all doing well. This video is going to be dedicated to the general lore surrounding the Shattered Empire in Rimworld. It is essentially a compilation of 4 of my videos regarding the subject, covering the history of the Empire, their society, psycasting, and then a theoretical look into how ancient starships within Rimworld, which are mentioned frequently in the Empire's lore, will function. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn the notifications on if you want to know when new content is going to drop. With this being said, let's begin. The Shattered Empire. The 24th of February 2020 marked an important day for Rimworld. It's the day when the Royalty DLC was released, adding into the game a large amount of new content and mechanics, notably psycasting, honor titles, a new ending, and a variety of weapons, body implants, and events. But most notably, and the obvious centerpiece and backbone of the Royalty DLC, was a new faction named the Shattered Empire. Along with the numerous game mechanics that this faction brought along, a sizable amount of lore was also made available to the fanbase throughout various in-game flavor texts. Today, I'm going to try to piece together as much information as I possibly can related to the Shattered Empire to paint as much of a complete picture as possible. If you think I got anything wrong, do not hesitate to let me know down in the comments so we can discuss and try to piece everything together correctly. And now, let's begin. Let's start with the most important piece of the puzzle. What is the Shattered Empire? If the name wasn't already that giveaway, this faction is composed primarily by an ultra-technologically advanced society of high-standard nobles, which are assigned throughout life a various amount of titles which determine their place within the society. Their form of leadership is a simple, hierarchical one. The higher your title within the Empire, the more power and control over other people you have, with the one residing at the top having absolute power, basically like a pyramid. Similarly, their government will also be defined as a feudalistic one. I'll elaborate more on the titles later, but for now, let's get this down in a simple way. The Shattered Empire is vast and scattered across the entire universe, with a Stellarch representing one of the highest titles within the Empires. Stellarchs are essentially the ones holding dominion over an entire star system, but the existence of many Stellarchs, all holding the same power, wouldn't make the Empire, well, an empire anymore. And that's why, despite holding absolute dominion in the area where they reside, Stellarchs still do not represent the absolute ruling title, which belongs to the Emperor, to which every Stellarch swears fealty to. So yes, the Shattered Empire in Rimworld can be described as a feudal government. The structure of the Shattered Empire is based on a hierarchical system where power is distributed among various nobles who govern specific territories. These nobles in turn owe allegiance to the Empire's monarch, the Emperor, who sits at the top of the hierarchy. In a feudal system, the ruling class is composed of nobles who have control over lands and people in exchange for military service or other forms of loyalty to their superior lords. This mirrors the Shattered Empire structure, where different ranks of nobility, like Baron, Count, and Stellarch, control their own people and territories, with each rank being subordinate to the one above it, all the way up to the Emperor or Empress. The nobles enforce laws, raise armies, and collect taxes within their territories, but they also owe fealty to the ruling emperor. The feudal nature of the Shattered Empire is also evident in its culture and expectations, where honor, loyalty, and service are highly valued, and where noble titles come with both privileges and responsibilities, similar to the feudal systems of medieval Europe. The social hierarchy, dependence on vassalage, and the emphasis on personal loyalty to the sovereign are all key features of a feudal system, making it a fitting description of the Shattered Empire's governance system. Another point that we should tackle is the fact that, despite the Emperor holding supreme power over the Empire, it is stated that the Emperor still requires the support of the lower nobles in order to remain in power. Keep in mind, a faster-than-light travel system was never developed in the Rimworld universe. Space travel takes a considerable amount of time, and because of this, it is not uncommon for years or even entire decades to pass with the Stellarchs never having any sort of contact with the Emperor itself or anyone outside of their own stellar system that they hold dominion on, making the title of Stellarch one that likely requires a great amount of endorsement and trust from other nobles and the Emperor itself in order to be obtained. This structure reflects the traditional feudal balance of power, where the monarch, while officially the supreme ruler, relies heavily on the loyalty and military support of the nobles beneath them. The nobles, who govern their own territories, have significant autonomy and power within their domains, and their support is crucial for maintaining the stability and security of the empire as a whole. Although the emperor is the ultimate authority, the empire's power is somewhat decentralized. The nobles wield considerable influence and can pose a threat to the emperor's rule if they are dissatisfied, or if their interests are not aligned with the emperor's policies. This creates a balance of power where the emperor must maintain the support of the nobility to avoid rebellion or fragmentation of the empire, creating a regime of mutual dependency between the stellarchs and the emperor, where the emperor provides protection, legitimacy, and sometimes rewards to the stellarchs, while the stellarchs provide military support and govern their territories in the emperor's name. This mutual dependency is crucial for the stability of the empire, but also makes the emperor vulnerable to the ambitions or dissent of powerful nobles, as it's very likely that a large amount of stellarchs, if they were to collaborate and unite their forces, they could easily overthrow the emperor. Of course, this is mainly speculation, as we don't have any information regarding to who the emperor is, where does it live, or what kind of armies or power it holds. There are theories floating around the community speculating that the emperor could be a sanguiphage, allowing it to live a long life and easily govern over the empire, but I'm going to say that personally I don't believe for that to be the case. First of all, you will never find sanguiphages as a natural members of the Shattered Empire. The Shattered Empire seems to be mainly composed of baseliners with a small amount of genies, hussars, and rarely Neanderthals. Being a sanguiphage is also not the only way to maintain a quasi-immortal life status within the rimworld universe, as biosculptor pods capable of rejuvenating someone over and over exist, along with extremely advanced medical treatments capable of bringing back the dead, which presents an interesting dynamic. Just for how long does an emperor stay in power? Normally, emperors tend to remain in power until death, or reaching the point where they won't be capable of mentally or physically governing their empire anymore. But within the rimworld universe, as long as you have the resources, which I'm going to assume the empire is not lacking, living for hundreds or even thousands of years wouldn't be impossible. So what about it? Is there just a singular emperor who's been living for thousands of years now? Is a new emperor chosen after a certain amount of time, likely from one of the emperor's sons and daughters, if they even exist? This is an interesting thing to consider, as both options will bring great imbalance within the empire's political government. For a singular person to remain in absolute power for such a long amount of time will require a considerable effort of remaining within every noble's graces, while if the power is passed on after a certain amount of time, when it's time for an emperor to quote-unquote retire, what happens to the old emperor? Is it given a special title? Does it hold any kind of power anymore as a former emperor? Or is it just killed or left to pass out naturally to avoid power imbalances? Personally, I believe the most likely option to be the first one. The emperor is one, and absolute, and remains in power as long as it stays alive and has the support of the lower nobles. When the emperor dies or the support is lost, a new one is considered and chosen from one of the emperor's sons or daughters. Now that we have a basic understanding on how the government system within the Shattered Empire functions, we can delve a little deeper and take a look at the titles that exist within its society, starting from the lowest to the highest. The first honorary title within the Shattered Empire is that of a freeholder, used by the Empire to signify a fully respected individual. Most imperial citizens earn it while young through volunteer work or military service. The title is also offered to outsiders who act within honor in the eyes of the Empire. This is an especially interesting title, as it reveals that being born within the Empire doesn't automatically qualify you for even the lowest of their titles, that of a freeholder, and actions such as military work are still required in order to prove loyalty and dedication towards the Emperor itself. Following on that, the yeoman title is the next natural step up from a freeholder. While not counting as a noble title, it is still awarded to those who serve a noble lord with an important or specific matter and allows the holder to use psychic abilities, which the Empire desperately attempts to hold monopoly and regulations over. This title is often held by senior soldiers, war skiff pilots, spies, advisors, diplomats, intrusion operatives, and other key individuals. Many important people spend their entire lives as yeomen, seeking success outside the strictures of nobility. The first title within the line of nobles is that of an acolyte. Acolytes are purely students, learning to lead troops, manage societies, or use psycasts in specialized schools. Others come from wealthy families and might own city buildings or farm complexes. During wartime, an acolyte might lead a platoon of troops, captain a small frigate, or serve their lord as an advisor. Their low rank within the nobility makes them paradoxically less useful as diplomats than yeomen. Sending a low-ranked acolyte to a negotiation can itself be seen as an insult, whereas a non-noble yeoman negotiator is seen only as the mouthpiece of his lord. The titles of knight or dame are gender-specific, and they represent nobles who have largely passed their training, but who have not ascended to higher leadership roles. Many knights never advance further and spend their lives as respected managers, advisors, or warriors. Most knights have some wealth, but a few remain quite poor, while others may be very rich. In peacetime, a knight may manage a factory complex, commercial district, or small farming region. In war, some knights lead troop companies and assault squadrons, while psychic-focused knights engage in espionage, sabotage, and battlefield psychic combat. The Praetor is an interesting one. It is essentially a title that holds the person owning it in a state of limbo, acting as a bridge between the service-oriented lower titles below and the power-holding nobility above. During peacetime, a Praetor will usually manage a city district, asteroid sector, or agricultural region. During war, they take authority over the smallest combat units that fight independently, terrestrial troops cohorts, or spaceborne destroyers or combat groups. After promoting from Praetor, the titles of the middle nobility start following next, with the title of Baron or Baroness being the lowest within the middle nobility caste. While lower titles focus on personal service at war or commerce under a lord, barons hold titles as semi-independent rulers. Each baron is subordinate to his liege lord, but his obligations are mostly in supplying wealth and troops, and not in personal service. In the empire, a baron will typically own a city sector, mining colony, or similar outfit. At wartime, a baron may captain a capital ship in name or control a regiment of troops. Following on that, probably the highest title obtainable by an outsider of the Shattered Empire is that of Count or Countess, the middle rank of middle nobility. In peacetime, counts hold titles to a city or colony and might have a small personal fleet, possibly including capital ships. But now onto the titles that indicate true leadership and power within the Shattered Empire. Some of the highest and most respected ranks, starting with the title of Duke or Duchess. The imperial title of Duke is the highest of the middle nobility. In the Empire, dukes control provinces, megacities, or moons. At war, a duke can field a division-level force or a fleet with capital ships and dozens of support craft. And now entering the ranks of high nobility. The imperial title of a consul is a lower level of high nobility. In the Empire, consuls control planets. At war, a consul can usually field an army-sized force of multiple divisions, supported by several fleets. Some command from a supercapital ship or control space-based megastructures. And if consuls govern entire planets, the ones responsible for governing stellar systems are the Stellarchs, which we already discussed previously. The imperial title of Stellarch represents dominion over an entire solar system, with a great degree of independence, as Stellarchs are outranked only by the Emperor itself, which, as we already discussed, is usually located within a great distance of each Stellarch, having a limited amount of contact with them over their lifetime, probably only during important or periodical meetings, which are most likely treated as an important event. With all of this out of the way, now that we established at least on a basic level how the government within the Shattered Empire functions, let's talk about the Empire's origins. The Shattered Empire has a long history within rimworld's universe. They used to be a strong clear world society residing over the planet of Sophia Munda, enforcing the same code of honor and strict class system, most likely holding an even greater amount of power within the universe. It is unclear what specifically happened, but a great calamity has struck the Empire at one point, forcing them to board their spaceships, gather what remained of their fleets, and taking refuge within various corners of the known universe. Prior to the 1.3 version update of RimWorld, the calamity was described as an invasion by outside forces taking over the Empire. It is unclear whether this still holds as canon, as that entry was modified and changed to an undescript calamity, but it's likely for that to be the case, as a different type of calamity, such as incurable disease pandemic or a natural disaster destroying their home planet Sophia Munda, still wouldn't warrant for the Empire to shatter and spread all over, especially all the way over rimworlds, which are found only at the very edges of the explored universe, essentially isolated from the rest of society. The fact that the Shattered Empire seems almost to be hiding over rimworlds is indicative that whoever or whatever might have attacked and destroyed their initial society, whether a mechanoid invasion, a powerful enemy fleet, or even an arc attack, might still be out there looking for them, preventing them from ever re-centralizing. The fact that we are never revealed or even hinted at the location of the Emperor itself might also be a nod about the fact that this information might be kept as a secret for the Emperor's safety, but once again, this is all just speculation on my part. Within Rimworld, the Shattered Empire is mostly described as a space society, with their people living among the stars on ultra-technologically advanced starships, where people are born, raised, and eventually die there, perhaps without ever even leaving those starships. Interestingly enough, the Shattered Empire colonies can still be found over Rimworld, but they are most likely acting as outposts for gathering resources and collecting taxes or tribute from other non-Empire belonging colonies. This is rather a gathering of various facts, institutions, jobs, and activities that take place within the Shattered Empire, which should help you understand or paint a picture on how life as a citizen of the Shattered Empire might look like. Let's begin with their ideological system. The Shattered Empire is first and foremost a faction that puts heavy accent on its traditions, rules, and heavy regulations, which are usually required to be strictly followed. We can analyze the Empire's ideology from two sources. The first one is, well, exactly that, the ideology that in-game pawns from the Shattered Empire have, while the second source will be from Imperial pawn backstories. It is important to separate these two sources as they both contradict and support each other, but that is probably due to the fact that the Empire DLC came before the Ideology DLC, and when the Empire faction was created, there was still no well-established ideological system within the game. But despite the backstories having clear contrast with the ideologies that Shattered Empire faction is generated with, this still makes sense. Let me explain. First of all, let's take a look at what kind of an ideology it's possibly for the Empire to generate with. I started multiple games in Rimworld, solely with the purpose of checking out what ideology the Shattered Empire will have as its default, and while some memes and precepts will change, others will always remain the same. The style is obviously always the same one, Sophian. It is after all a style that originates from their home planet, a bit weird if they won't be making use of that. Their memes, on the other hand, while some can vary, there are two that are always present and immutable, at least from the testing I've performed: Loyalist and Collectivist. Loyalism essentially represents an immutable faith and loyalty towards the established ruler or government and system, much like the Empire holds great faith and loyalty towards their High Stellarchs, towards their Emperor, and especially towards the Empire as a whole. Collectivism is an ideology that enforces, well, the collective. Collectivists believe that a group of people and what it represents is more important than the individuals within it, much like the Empire again, which fully believes that a citizen's life is nothing when compared to the greatness of the Empire. Other memes that the Empire faction can be generated with are male or female supremacy and human supremacy, but those are generally random and not guaranteed. Slavery is always accepted within the Empire's ideology, as their collectivism does dictate that a slave's life and freedom is irrelevant when compared to the amount of work and benefit it can bring to the Empire. Drug usage is also disapproved or generally prohibited, so don't expect Imperial parties to be too wild. Child labor is always encouraged, and that makes sense. As we have discussed in the previous video, the honorary title of freeholder within the Empire is something that most citizens acquire at a young age through voluntary work or military service. But the most interesting part is the following. It seems that no matter what, the Shattered Empire's ideology will always hold a strong faith in architects, for they believe architects to be their true gods, which is something I can't blame them for, as architects are indeed the closest thing there is to a living god in Rimworld. So this is interesting. We don't know what architect the Empire worships, but we know that they worship one, as the imperial backstories with religious backgrounds will always bring mention of one god and not multiple ones. Now, I can already hear it. There is going to be someone mentioning this. Well, what if the Emperor is an architect? It could be, but I strongly doubt that to be the case. We have already established that the Emperor requires the support of lower nobles in order to stay in power, and I heavily doubt that an architect would require that. Plus, that will elevate the Emperor to a status of godhood, meaning that the churches mentioned in various backgrounds will be dedicated to worshipping the Emperor itself, not a god. Another theory could be that Sophia Munda itself was an architect, and that the great calamity that happened and shattered the Empire was the destruction of Sophia Munda's architect, but I also do not believe for that to be the case. It's been already established multiple times that Sophia Munda was a clear world, not a transcendent world. And let's consider this. If Sophia Munda was indeed an architect and it was destroyed, wouldn't that kind of be one of the most important events in human history? It certainly won't be a hidden piece of information up to speculation. Seriously, for an architect to be destroyed, it will be the equivalent of killing a god. News of that will spread across the entire galaxy, stories will be mentioned constantly, and history will take an immutable turn. So I don't believe for that to be the case either. Then why? Why does the Empire's faction worships the architects? What is the hidden meaning behind this? Honestly, I think there is no hidden meaning behind it. I'm going to employ Occam's razor here, and say that the reason their ideological system worships an architect is simply because it's what makes the most sense in this universe. It's been proven multiple times that architects are, again, the closest thing there is to a living god. Why won't you be worshipping that? If a planet-sized computer will have the power of thwarting my thoughts, transforming me into a sanguiphage, curing any type of illness, or destroying entire societies with endless mechanoid armies, I would be damn insane not to try to get on its side, if that was even possible. So yes, I do believe that the Shattered Empire has an architectural ideological structure simply because it's what makes the most sense for an ultra-technologically advanced society to believe in. And now let's dive into the various imperial backgrounds. Let's see what kind of information we can dig up from there. If their strict societal class system wasn't already a big enough hint, the Shattered Empire does not believe in the equality of humans and their rights. From the Empire's point of view, certain humans are no different from cattle, and this is indicated with their inclination towards the acceptance of slavery and even accepting live human prisoners as a form of tribute from outside factions or colonies. Even people acting within a higher status of imperial warriors are considered as fully expendable, as the Empire will often provide soldiers or guards towards colonies hosting important nobles during visits, with the Empire being completely unfazed or unbothered in the event of these soldiers' death, as their lives are most likely seen as inferior or insignificant when compared to the life of the noble that they are meant to protect. Interestingly enough though, the Empire seems to have a strong belief in gender equality most of the times, as it's not uncommon to see both man and woman in high positions of power, either as Stellarchs or even possibly bearing the title of Emperor or Empress. Continuing on the ideological theme, the Shattered Empire puts heavy emphasis on religion and spirituality, with the Church holding great power within the state, acting as a secondary law enforcement authority. A commoner's backstory job includes the occupation of Imperial Inquisitor, belonging to the Church's anti-heresy school. An Imperial Inquisitor's duty would essentially revolve around conducting investigations around supposed acts of heresy and eradicating any form of thought, whether expressed through literature, art, music, or even private conversations that will go against the Church's imposed ideologies and commandments. This indicates that the Shattered Empire enforces heavy censorship, and it's likely that most of their media is heavily regulated and checked before becoming public, outright banning and punishing anything that will put the Emperor and the Empire's laws and ideologies in a bad light. Not just that, but mind control is also used on a certain degree to promote the Church's beliefs, as Church psychics will be trained within psychic schools to sense the emotions of a collective of citizens and outright eradicate heretic thoughts, meaning that within the Empire, not even your own mind was considered private, and people will most likely be punished just for having different and unapproved thoughts. The Empire seems to also function on a monotheistic faith, as priests from the Empire's church, which we already established to exist as an authority figure, will be endowed with the duty of spreading the word of a singular, unnamed architect god. Judging by this backstory, their belief seems to heavily disapprove of two things: alcohol and laziness, essentially promoting an ideology in which the common man should constantly be striving to work for the greater good of the empire and avoid other kind of distractions. It's unspecified whether alcohol is outrightly banned within the empire or simply frowned upon, but judging by the power that the church holds, it wouldn't be unlikely for the first scenario to be the case. If alcohol is outrightly banned within the empire, yet priests will still preach and disapprove of the act, we can deduce that illegal or underground breweries do exist within its societies, and creating a similar scenario to that of the Great Prohibition era of the United States. While drinking and laziness is clearly considered a sin within the Sophian society, there is a chance that the oldest job in the world might not be only approved but also legal within the Empire's territory, as a possible backstory for a commoner's childhood might include being a bastard offspring, born from the intercourse of a noble with someone from a brothel. It is unclear though whether those brothels will be legal within the Empire or not. Commoners will also be often employed or find themselves in servitude of noble families, with jobs including the likes of royal cooks, tasked with creating gourmet masterpieces for their masters, house servants, tasked with keeping the noble residences spotlessly clean while attempting their best to have the least amount of contact with their masters, only reporting and taking orders from the house's head butler, which was tasked with managing the other servants and doing its lord's bidding. Another type of servant, which will often have contact with the royal nobles, will be the one taking the role of a royal masseuse, which will be tasked with employing various massage techniques to please the nobles, sometimes even having to recur to certain favors in order to remain in their favor and advancing in their line of work. Spectacles, art and entertainment are also common within the Empire's nobles, as possible career options for commoners would include becoming ballet dancers or ornament makers, and in some cases even menagerie keepers, tasked with caring for the household's private zoos. And if not artistically inclined, commoners will also direct their lives towards other paths, such as becoming crop farmers, cattle breeders, planetary miners, factory assemblers, or even working within mail delivery companies, while more ambitious commoners will strive towards a corporate career, starting as simple office workers attempting to promote towards management positions. But let's make a step up in the Sophian ladder, far away from the common rabble and into the lives of nobles. Just what kind of specific duties would nobles have to fulfill within the empire? One of them was that of a land worker, a noble position which implied heavy involvement within the more industrious side of life, supervising and managing agricultural lands and mineral exploitment companies. And while they will be never required to manually take part in these activities and work the fields or the drills themselves, it was still required for them to have the proper knowledge of various farming and mining methods. Nobles that were more artistically inclined could build a fortune upon investing on various forms of art, becoming patrons for various artists in order to finance the production of artistical expressions that will glorify their family, the imperial church, and the empire itself. But with a society that puts such a heavy accent on the aspects of nobility and politics, it's only natural that the art of subterfuge and information handling will be heavily practiced, in particular by the nobles taking the role of spy masters within their household, requiring a cold, calculating nature in order to partake in activities that involve the usage of the blade, poison, and betrayal. And while this lifestyle might require a subtle approach in the arts of violence and death, direct approaches will be taken by the nobles partaking the role of war masters, overseeing the military matters of their households and sometimes even directing the commanders in the field of battle. And while we're on the subject of military, let's talk about the imperial army. What kind of positions could someone fulfill within the military regiment? If we exclude the simple role of line infanteers, essentially the army's cannon fodder, soldiers could take on various specializations, such as engineers, recon snipers, medics, or officers. Demolitionists are self-explanatory. Requiring nerves of steel and a steady hand, demolitionists are tasked with the manufacturing and handling of explosives used to breach enemy defenses. Skilled pilots, meanwhile, could aspire to the position of firebombers, becoming fighter bomber pilots, a type of flying vehicle specialized in the spread of incendiary gel over flammable targets. And if piloting a miniature napalm spreader won't be adrenaline-inducing enough for you, aiming towards the position of ship cracker would always be an option. Probably one of the most dangerous roles within the army. Ship crackers are a special military unit whose role is to be essentially launched through the vacuum of space towards the hull of enemy spaceships in order to penetrate it, gain access in the interior, and steadily conquer it from the inside through the use of advanced cataphracts armor and melee weapons. Likely monoswords, capable of cutting both through flesh and steel, requiring a heavy expertise in close quarter combat. But if you're unskilled in the usage of a charged weapon or monosword and yet want to avoid becoming cannon fodder, do not worry, the Empire still has use for you in the army's backstage. Ever heard of the expression, "the pen is mightier than the sword"? This expression will prove true in the role of Empire's propagandists, tasked with creating works of art that will favorably depict the army and its lords. But within the military, the most unforgivable act that someone could do was abandoning the army and becoming a deserter. Whether out of cowardice or ideological reasons, deserters and traitors are all treated the same within the Empire, and will be forced in a life of isolation, often taking refuge within rimworlds in an attempt to escape the Empire, as the army will make a point out of mercilessly hunting down deserters and any that will dare help them in their escape. It is important to note that while the above-mentioned lifestyles and professions mostly take place on land, many citizens of the Shattered Empire end up spending their entire lives on board of ancient starships, sometimes never leaving their enclosure, with these spaceships acting essentially as large cities amidst the void of space, where Imperials will take refuge, especially those living alongside rimworlds, in order to avoid contact with the outside world, with the few Imperial colonies present on rimworlds acting mainly as outposts to gather resources and tribute from other colonies. Rimworld, a universe of futuristic technology, interplanetary wars, jetpacks, futuristic guns, and magic? Well, yes, but actually no. At the very least, not in the case of Psycasting. You heard me correctly. Whether it's teleportation or generating a small sun the size of your fist, there's actually no magic involved, at least according to the lore of Rimworld. But how? How is that possible? Don't worry, my dear colonist, we'll get there soon. But first, let's get down to what Psycasting actually is, before explaining how it works according to Rimworld's lore. First introduced as a new game mechanic with the Empire DLC, Psycasting allows the practice of focusing your mind to produce various effects, which can vary from beneficial towards your friends to destructive towards your enemies. But how do you become a Psycaster, you ask? Well, there are multiple paths that can be approached in order to obtain this goal. The first and simplest way is to make use of a silent neuroformer. The neuroformer is a one-time use device created by an architect that, upon being pressed over someone's eyes, it will link directly to the brain, restructuring and reshaping certain parts of it, allowing the user to become a Psycaster. While using a neuroformer is child's play, as the device essentially does all the work, obtaining one is the real issue. Most neuroformers are monopolized by the Shattered Empire, which jealously guards the secrets of Psycasting. Neuroformers are given by the Empire's bestower upon obtaining a certain noble title, but sometimes deserters and fugitives will be in possession of one or will be aware of the location of said neuroformers, although obtaining one this way will most likely turn you into an enemy of the Empire. The second way to obtain Psycasting powers is through an anima tree, a method mainly approached by tribal colonies, as it will require a deep connection with nature and many hours of meditation next to an anima tree. The third and perhaps hardest way, which many researchers still haven't found a way to properly explain, is through a blinding ceremony. As the name implies, blinding ceremonies imply a ritual which will leave the person at its center permanently blind. It is not a common occurrence, but a few cases have been reported through the universe of people developing Psycasting powers after such a ceremony, although it is not guaranteed. So, let's say you have developed Psycasting powers. Now what? Well, those powers can be further enhanced through the usage of more Psylink neuroformers or further connections to an animatry, but developing a Psylink is not enough to become a Psycaster, as Psyfocus must also be accounted for. Psyfocus is a special type of mental structuring, which is necessary to use psychic powers. Psyfocus dissipates over time and must be built by regular meditation. Losing all of Psyfocus makes someone unable to use Psycasts, but has no other consequences. Higher levels of Psyfocus permit higher level powers, but also increase the rate of Psyfocus dissipation. Every time a person makes use of their psychic powers, a certain amount of Psyfocus is consumed, which can be regained through intensive meditation. Keep in mind that the type of meditation available can be unique to each person, as clearing one's mind is a process that becomes more efficient the moment a meditation focus is used. Different people, depending on their personality and other traits, will make use of different meditation. Most tribals will make use of a natural, a meditation type which is effective when performed outdoors with no nearby artificial structures, preferably next to a shrine dedicated to nature, allowing the person to focus their thoughts on the great outdoors, becoming one with the nature. Ascetics are people who renounce the notion of comfort and earthly pleasures. They will be able to focus the most through the use of a minimalistic meditation, essentially meditating in front of an empty wall, allowing them to clear their thoughts and empty their mind, mirroring the aspect of the empty wall. The most common meditation type, though, is the artistic one. By focusing in front of an artistic piece, the thoughts evoked by it can be directed towards meditation purposes, allowing the person to shape their mind and thoughts with ease. People with psychopath inclinations will find peace and will be able to focus with more ease when using a morbid meditation focus, which is usually performed in front of a grave, especially one belonging to a beloved one or a family member, as fond memories or philosophical thoughts of death and life will allow proper focusing and introspection. Commonly encountered within people holding high noble titles is the dignified meditation focus. Performed on a throne located in a wealthy looking room, preferably within a palace, this meditation focus will invoke feelings of power and superiority, which can help the user in gathering mental fortitude and strength. And last but not least, the flame focus. Commonly performed by people with pyromaniacal inclinations, intensely staring into a fire can evoke various feelings of pleasure, destruction, and purification, allowing them to efficiently calm their mind and meditate. Other ways to increase a person's psi focus include making use of a go juice, performing or participating in an ideological ritual with the purpose of recharging their psi focus, or, rarely encountered, taking someone's life while handling a persona weapon with the kill focus trait. But psi focus is not the only thing that must be taken into account when performing psychic feats. Neural heat refers to a type of chaotic psychic energy in the mind, which is built up when using psychic powers and dissipates over the course of a few seconds or minutes. If neural heat is pushed past normal limits, it may cause temporary psychic breakdown and unconsciousness due to psychic shock. One's neural heat limit will increase depending on the Psylink level, with higher levels allowing the user to tolerate more neural heat within their brain. It can also be further dissipated by wearing clothes or armor made out of Eltex, a material that through unknown means conducts and dissipates a person's neural heat from their mind. This material is original to the Shattered Empire. Psychic sensitivity must also be taken into account when considering psycasting. Psychic sensitivity is a unit to measure a person's sensitivity to psychic phenomena, and while people with a high psychic sensitivity will be severely affected by psychic phenomena, such as psychic drones, it will also increase their neural hit limit, essentially making them stronger psycasters. Psycasters will gradually gain access to a wide variety of psycasting powers, some developing naturally and seemingly at random, while other powers can be forced to develop through the usage of a psytrainer, a one-time use device which will inject a dose of mechanites within a person's brain, reconfiguring and training it in the usage of a specific psycast. Different psycasts can have wildly different effects, but the capability of using a psycast will depend on a person's Psylink, as stronger psycasts can only be learned and used effectively when the Psylink requirement is met. For the level 1 psycasts, we have the following. Burden. It will slow the target creature for a short time by suppressing their motor activity within the brain. The Word of Trust is a particularly effective way of implanting a suggestion of trust and amicability towards a prisoner, lowering their resistance and increasing their cooperation. Pain Block will block nerves and pain pathways found within the target's brain for a short time, allowing them to last out longer in combat without passing away from a pain-induced shock. The Stun Psycast will momentarily disrupt motor functions, rendering the target unable to move for a short moment. The chunk skip will essentially teleport the 5 closest debris of rock or metal around the caster in a certain area, scattering them around. Widely effective to suddenly produce cover during offensive operations. The solar pinhole is an interesting one. It will create a microscopic wormhole towards the core of a nearby star, allowing its heat and light within the environment, illuminating and warming it up. This wormhole is not an effective portal, as it will only create a leak through the space-time dimension. Not enough to pass through, but enough for the warmth and light to leak through weakly. Level 2 Psycasts come as they follow. The blinding pulse will induce noise in the visual centers of the brain, obscuring vision of everyone near the target point, essentially blinding them for the duration. The word of joy will allow a Psycaster to implant a psychic suggestion within a person's mind, causing the brain to release an increased amount of dopamine and suppress uncomfortable thoughts, improving their overall mood at the cost of reducing their consciousness for the duration. The water skip Psycast will cause a large amount of water to skip from a distant body of water or from the underground over a certain area, particularly useful for extinguishing fires. The neural hit dump is the ace in the sleeve of most Psycasters. As their neural heat will reach a dangerously high limit, this Psycast will allow them to dump their neural heat into someone else's mind, causing them to fall into a comatose state for a day. While particularly useful in combat, it cannot be used on enemy combatants, as the target must be willing to receive the neural heat. Tier 3 Psycasts gradually become stronger as they start affecting the human mind and the spatial environment in a much stronger way. The word of love will allow the implantation of a psychic suggestion, manipulating the listener's brain into a romantic attraction. It can be used to connect two different people together, induce someone else's love for the caster, or even in particular scenarios, make the caster feel more attracted towards someone else. I will assume for this Psycast to be particularly regulated within the Empire and for it to be used especially during arranged marriages between two noble houses. The beckoning Psycast will allow a brief moment of mind control, forcing the target to approach the caster, particularly useful to draw out enemy combatants or to capture targets. The chaos skip is an undelicate and unprecise mean of teleportation. It will distort the spatial dimension around the target, teleporting it to a random nearby position. The vertigo pulse is a particularly strong one, and efficient as a non-lethal crowd control technique. It will cause a strong pulse that will interfere with the spatial orientation sense of everyone next to a target point, causing loss of balance and nausea, briefly incapacitating them. Tier 4 Psycasting allows the use of many other powers with far stronger effects. The smoke pop Psycast will skip a large amount of dust particles from beneath the soil in order to create a thick cloud, obscuring visibility and reducing effective aim. The word of serenity is a calming psychic suggestion, which can forcefully end a person or an animal's mental breakdown, causing them to rapidly fall comatose for a few hours. The skip Psycast is a much refined version of the chaos skip, allowing the user to teleport a target to a desired position. The only limit is that the target cannot be skipped much further than the starting position. The Focus Psycast allows the user to improve a target's senses, effectively boosting their sight, hearing, and moving capacities. Wall Raise is a psychic power that will allow the Psycaster to form a temporary but solid wall of rubble and soil by skipping it from beneath the ground, effective for granting defensive cover or stopping the advance of enemy forces. And now, as we approach the limit of a human's mind in terms of Psycasting capabilities, we reach level 5, granting far stronger powers. The Far Skip Psycast allows the caster, alongside with anyone standing near him, to teleport a distant location. While this can essentially allow someone to instantly travel from one point of a planet to another, there is a caveat involved. The location where the caster wishes to arrive requires the presence of a person mentally willing to allow that to happen at the location where they wish to arrive, essentially functioning as a mental navigation beacon. The Word of Inspiration is another suggestive Psycast, which will inspire the target and increase their neural activity in the creative department, flooding their mind with new inspirations and ideas. The Flashstorm Psycast will make use of multiple skip gates in the atmosphere to generate a precisely localized flash storm, striking the area with lightning bolts for a short period of time. The Berserk Psycast is a simple but effective ability, inducing a violent mental breakdown on the target, causing it to indiscriminately attack anyone around, including their own allies. The Invisibility Psycast is rather interesting. Despite its name, it will not make a person invisible, rather it will cause people around them to become unable to perceive their presence. A Psycaster using this power might be in front of you. You will be able to see and hear it without an issue, but your brain will be manipulated into completely ignoring it, rendering them essentially invisible. And now the final tier of Psylink, level 6. These psychic powers will cause a great accumulation of neural heat within a person's mind, but the effects will bend both reality and their mind in ways that humankind will have never thought possible. The Berserk Pulse is a terrifying power. It will force a flight or fight reaction within people in a certain area, causing them to enter a state of rage and physical violence directed towards the most nearby person. While it might not seem all that strong or particularly spectacular, just imagine yourself on the receiving end, going to battle alongside a lifelong friend only to suddenly find unprompted urge to end their life, finding yourself strangling them as life vanishes from their eyes, only for the effect to dissipate later, leaving you with nothing but the realization and regret of your own actions. The Mass Chaos Skip is similar to the Chaos Skip, but rather than randomly teleporting a single target, it will cause the random displacement of everyone within a certain area. The Skip Shield, despite its name, is not an actual shield, but it works just as well as a real one, perhaps even better, as this Psycast will generate a spherical skip gate far too thin to teleport anyone passing through, but large enough to teleport away any bullets or projectiles passing through, providing an exceptional defense. The Manhunter Pulse. By focusing one's mind on feelings of rage and hatred, the caster will direct all of these feelings towards nearby animal life, driving them into a rabid-like state and causing them to become highly aggressive towards any human encountered. This Psycast is widely known for destroying entire platoons with minimal effort. And finally, what is perhaps one of the most chaotic and destructive Psycasts known to man, the Neuroquake. The Neuroquake is a particularly strong Psycast, which, in order to be used, will require the caster to intensively meditate for 12 uninterrupted seconds, after which they will fall into a comatose state for 5 days. While channeling the Neuroquake and meditating, the caster will find a discontinuity in the psychic field and will proceed to unfold it, releasing a massive amount of psychic energy, driving everyone located in the area outside of the caster's protective inner circle to be driven violently insane, being essentially a much stronger version of the Berserk Pulse. Even with the most experienced Psycaster, the Neuroquake is rarely used, and is most of the time kept as a last resource, as the unfolding of the psychic field will work as an indiscriminate attack, inflicting great pain on everyone and everything for many kilometers around the caster. Now, as I finally finished explaining what Psycasting is, I can proceed to tell you exactly how it works. At the beginning of this, I mentioned that it is in no way just simple magic, and curiously enough, Psycasting is a poorly understood and somewhat explained phenomena within the universe. While indeed it doesn't make sense for humans to be capable of simply altering the laws of physics or affecting people's thoughts and consciousness using only their mind, the explanation is rather simple. The caster, despite its name, is not the point of origin of a Psycast. There is only one force strong enough to seemingly manipulate reality at will, bend the laws of physics, and strongly affecting people's minds to force certain thoughts or actions onto them. The Architects. Every Psycasting is in fact the work of an architect. Becoming a Psycaster is the process to connecting one's mind to a seemingly galactic-wide psychic field, allowing the Psycaster to induce an architect superintelligence located somewhere far away in the universe to influence reality in a certain way. This by no way means that becoming a Psycaster is the equivalent of controlling an architect. Rather, if I were to explain it, the Psycaster is essentially a proxy between an architect's powers and the area the Psycaster is located in. The reason why Psycasters can choose what Psycast to use and how is also related to architects. There are many architects across the universe, each with its own personality, thoughts, and desires, and this variety is exactly what allows Psycasters to choose what to do and how. Let me explain. Let's say that a Psycaster desires to extinguish the flames that are currently devouring his home. By concentrating on the water skip Psycast, the caster will essentially connect to a benevolent architect, which will make use of the Psycaster as a proxy to produce the water skip effect out of its own benevolence and love, while the usage of a Berserk Pulse will allow the Psycaster to simply allow a malevolent architect that wishes for nothing but the destruction of the human race out of pure hatred to affect everyone within that area. Again, simply acting as a proxy. Essentially, it all boils down to the Psycaster aligning its interests with one of the many architects existing across the galaxy. Of course, becoming a proxy for a godlike entity to manifest its powers is nothing but a simple task, especially for one's mind, as that would essentially involve a direct mental connection with a godlike entity, which even for a brief second can be devastating, this being the reason why mental preparation under the form of meditation must be applied. This explanation covers many many aspects of psycasting. For one, the fact that Psylink neuroformers are created by architects as a way to allow people to psychically connect with them on a certain level. The second aspect that psycasting covers is something that I mentioned in a previous video and I want to address now. In my video covering the lore of the Shattered Empire, I attempted to offer my personal opinion on why the Empire's ideology worships architects. The explanation I offered was rather lackluster, revolving around the argument of they do because it's what makes most sense. And while that explanation is not entirely incorrect, it's definitely incomplete. The reason why the Empire worships the architects is because it's what makes the most sense, as the architects are the source of their psychic powers, in particular one specific architect, as we have already established that the Empire is led by a monotheistic faith. Now, whether this architect is the planet Sophia Munda itself or one that they came into contact with at some point in time is entirely up for debate. I would also like to highlight Paka's 64's comment on my last video for raising a good point about the Empire likely collaborating or being in a certain of amicable contact with an architect due to the high amount of Psylink neuroformers they are in possession of, along with the secret of the creation of the Altex material. But this now brings us back to another question. How are the animatries involved in this? They are fully capable of bestowing a Psylink onto someone without any type of technology. How is that possible? To that, I offered two theories. The first is my personal theory, and the second is one that I consider really good, coming from one of my subscribers. My first personal theory is that, since Psylinking involves connecting one's mind to a psychic field, this process becomes possible due to the extensive amount of meditation that one has to partake with around the animatry, creating a strong bond not just with nature, but with the universe itself. This bond ultimately allowing a person to connect with the animatry, the gateway of the universe towards two different planes of existence, the physical and the psychical one. The second theory, which I read in my comment section, belongs to Kashi6145. According to Kashi, the reason why the animatry can allow the formation of Psylinks is due to its roots being connected to an Arconexus. This theory is further supported by the high presence of animatries around the Arconexus itself, with the Arconexus essentially being a dormant architect extending its powers unconsciously towards animatries, which will essentially work as a proxy between a person and the Arconexus itself. Now, one aspect that I feel it's worth mentioning in this video, as it's closely related to the rimworld lore, is its biggest inconsistency, and that's the faster than light inconsistency. As I mentioned in the first video of this rimworld lore series, a faster than light spaceship engine was never developed, not even by architects, and while the Johnson-Tanaka drive allows for spaceships to rapidly travel from one planet to another, space travel still takes a considerable amount of time, to the point where people will require to undergo cryptosleep in order to avoid dying of old age by the time they will reach their destinations. The Psycasting directly contradicts this, as architects are not only capable of manifesting their reality-bending powers while being located presumably many light years away, but the skipping powers I have mentioned previously also allow for people or things to be seemingly instantly teleported from one place to another. There is a whole analysis on the wiki if you're interested. I will also be leaving a screenshot of it on the video, so you can pause and read on all the details if you want. Kudos to the rimworld wiki for this amazing analysis. In some way, I can find this inconsistency excusable, as it could be motivated or explained by the fact that seemingly transporting a number of people from one point of the planet to the other in an instant, or opening a small disruption in space-time to allow the light and warmth of a star to leak onto an environment through the solar pinhole Psycast, will be far more feasible than instantaneously transporting at a faster than light speed an entire spaceship complete with occupants, infrastructure, and belongings, especially from one solar system to the other. In some way, this canonically confirms that the psychic field through which architects manifest their powers through psycasting belongs to a plane of existence where distance is irrelevant. Let's say you were born in the universe of Rimworld. Unknowingly to you, the place of your birth will most likely be the greatest factor in determining how the rest of your life will play out. Were you born on a glare world? Congratulations! You just won the lottery of life. Most likely, you will never even learn about the concepts of hunger, war, or disease. You'll be pampered from birth and allowed to dedicate your life to whatever passions you will develop over the course of a long, happy, healthy life that could easily span for centuries due to the existence of age reversal techniques, advanced medical equipments, and even serums capable of bringing you back from the dead in case of a nasty accident. Were you born on an orb world? Tough luck. you'll most likely spend your life working grueling hours in a mass production factory, inhaling chemical fumes, or compiling dozens of thousands of documents and digital files in some cramped office for one of the hundreds of mega corporations on that planet, while living inside an even more cramped apartment complex, as the concept of countryside homes and spacious farmhouses now belongs to the past, with overpopulation being a problem bigger than ever. But it could be worse. You could be born inside of a dark, damp bunker in the underground of a tox world, having to rely on toxic potatoes or, if you're lucky, hydroponic basins for your survival while having to constantly fend off insectoid invasions and scavenging for any technological relic or resource that could aid your group's survival. That, if you don't perish by a lethal amount of toxicity or radiations by then. Unless you're a waster, chances are you won't make it out without a few tumors. And of course, you could be born on a rimworld, the wild card. Depending on what kind of colony your parents will belong to, your life might be drastically different from case to case. You could be born into a nudist tribe and chase antelopes in the desert while running away from mechanoids, or you could be born to an ultra-technological refugee colony and possibly end up stripped of your childhood from the beginning, as you will leave a growth vat as an already full-fledged adult. Perhaps your colony wasn't that bad to begin with. You had a reliable food source, loving parents, a decent living space, and oh wait, you just got attacked by a group of pirates and sold into slavery for the rest of your life. But, and now hear me out, what if you were not born onto any planet at all? What if you were born on board of a spaceship? It is not unheard of for humans in the universe of Rimworld to live on board of spaceships their entire lives. In the lore entry of Dirt Molds, for example, it's stated that they can be found in deep mines, cramped low-tech spacecraft, and teeming by the billions in the dark underlayers of countless Earthworlds. Meanwhile, it is stated clearly multiple times that the Shattered Empire and most of its citizens, after abandoning their home planet Sophia Munda, used what remained of their fleet to take refuge on various corners of the universe, living inside large ancient starships and making use of various outposts on the surface of other planets to most likely gather resources or establish dominance over other colonies and populations. And now, let's get to the point of this video. What would it be like to live on an ancient spaceship in Rimworld? First of all, this is mostly going to be speculation on my part. Across the game there is little to no detail offered in regard to those spaceships, but that's fine. We know what's possible and what isn't possible, technologically speaking, in the universe of Rimworld, and that should allow us to theorize and speculate in a semi-accurate way how would a society living on board of a giant spaceship even work. Keep in mind, I will be referring to this in a broad term and not necessarily talking about the Empire's own spaceships. In order to approach this in an orderly fashion and avoid this video to become too chaotic, jumping from one point to another and skipping relevant parts, I have designed this pyramid of needs. It is reminiscent of Maslow's pyramid for human needs, and yes, while it is essentially the same, it's rather a pyramid of needs for a spaceship living society, rather than for a singular person. Also, while this is a theoretic approach, we are still going to try and make use of Rimworld's known technologies. What we are not going to take into account for this theory craft is going to be architechnology, for obvious reasons. Anything ultra-tech or below is fair game though. So let's start with the very bottom of the pyramid, the foundation required for these spaceships to even exist. Structural integrity. Hull integrity is rather self-explanatory. The ship must be built and it must be solid. It must be large enough and at the same time capable of sustaining its entire structure, along with being capable of withstanding the vacuum of space and micro-meteoroid impacts, and the material that will be most likely used for its construction will be plasteel. Extremely strong and yet lightweight at the same time, with plasteel having only half the weight of steel. It's most likely that the majority of the spaceship's hull will be built out of plasteel, perhaps already in orbit through the usage of smaller spaceships or mechanoids. External shielding will be very important as well. While plasteel will ensure the structural integrity of the spaceship, it is imperative for the hull to be completely isolated. First, to avoid any internal temperature dispersion to the vacuum of space along with possible oxygen leaks, and second, to protect against cosmic rays and solar radiation, which will be damaging both to the inhabitants and the various tech located inside of the ship. Following next is propulsion. The spaceship will require a fitting propulsion system. While it won't be moving around too much, for reasons that I'm going to explain later, it should still be capable of doing so if required. Otherwise, it won't be a spaceship anymore, rather a giant hunk of metal floating aimlessly with no way of changing its course, essentially a disaster waiting to happen. And finally, maintenance systems. Monitoring and repair systems most likely handled by mechanoids for any outside maintenance in order to continuously detect and address any issues related to structural integrity, oxygen leaks, malfunctions, or engine issues. The maintenance systems are going to be imperative to know if something goes wrong and how to fix it before it escalates into a major issue. These elements put together represent the ship itself, the very foundation that will allow anything further to be built inside of it. They are the most important part because obviously with no ship you have nothing. Following next is life support, the systems that are going to allow people on board to remain alive. Let's start with oxygen. Humans need oxygen more than water and food. You could survive a month without food, a week without water, but you couldn't survive more than a minute or two without oxygen. For this you will require a way to produce it, such as an oxygen production plant, which will work for example through the use of an algae that will produce oxygen through photosynthesis and at the same time double as a dioxide disposal unit. Following next is water. Water will be an extremely important resource on board of a starship. It will be necessary to power up oxygen production, it will be necessary for people in order to drink, and it will be necessary to grow crops. Now, while water could essentially be filtered and recycled many times over through the use of condensation recovery, reclaiming plant-transpired water vapor from hydroponic systems, and even using a Sabatier reaction, a process which will produce water and methane through a reaction of hydrogen with carbon dioxide, a process employed nowadays by the ISS, the International Space Station, after many years, one will still probably reach a point where more water will be required from an outside source to facilitate everything. There are multiple solutions to this conundrum. The first and probably simplest one will be to send a shuttle or a smaller spacecraft towards the surface of a planet to simply collect more water. It wouldn't even have to be an inhabitable planet, just one with semi-drinkable water that could be later on filtered. The second solution will be to find water in space. It won't be easy, but chances are you could at some point come across an asteroid completely covered or perhaps even made of ice, which you could harvest to later on melt, purify, and later on use. The third solution, which is kind of a cheat and I don't want to officially take into account as it will be technically making use of Arco technology, will be to simply have a Psycaster to skip some water inside of a large basin. I mentioned this simply as a fact, as people in rimworld could definitely do this and most probably already are doing this. But it will require first of all to get into possession of a silent neuroformer, a piece of Arco technology which couldn't be simply created, and then you will require for a Psycaster to learn water skip, so this method will be not only unreliable to achieve in the first place but also perhaps completely unobtainable for certain societies. Following next is sustenance. Probably the easiest to solve as long as oxygen and water are provided on a steady supply. Sustenance will be simply provided through the use of solar lamps and hydroponic basins to produce vegetables, which in turn could be used to feed animals, essentially allowing a balanced diet through vegetables, meat, and animal produce. While chickens will undeniably be one of the best options as they will reproduce quickly, produce lots of eggs and meat, and require little space and nutrition, larger animals such as cows or sheep could be bred depending on space and food availability. Everything could be easily cooked or repurposed into nutrient paste for better efficiency. The following issue to tackle to guarantee a steady life support will be temperature. Space is cold, like really cold, about minus 270 degrees Celsius or minus 454 degrees Fahrenheit. As we previously discussed, it is imperative for the ship's hull to be properly isolated as to make sure heat will be preserved inside and the cold will remain outside. Other than that, proper ventilation and heaters will be required to allow plants to grow and people to not die of cold. Another issue that must be approached is going to be sanitation. People are going to die, animals are going to die, food is going to rot, waste is going to be produced, all of this must be disposed of. Otherwise, what will be meant to be a life-sustaining spaceship will soon turn into a breeding ground for germs, bacteria, and disease. The easiest solution will be to simply jettison outside any waste, disinfect and clean every area regularly and stop worrying about it. The best solution though will be to recycle it, but more on that later. And now energy. Everything I've mentioned so far is going to definitely require energy in order to function. This shouldn't be that big of an issue. Ship reactors exist and they are capable of powering a ship on a journey through space for many years without issue, but one will require to try and maximize the efficiency of power generation, especially somewhere where resources are limited. First of all, solar panels will be undeniably helpful. Through the ship's propulsion, one could guarantee that the solar panels will be constantly facing a star to harness energy from. A toxifier generator could also be used as it wouldn't require fuel in order to work, and the resulting toxic waste could simply be disposed of by being launched into space or inefficiently deconstructed in a waste pack atomizer, something that won't make much sense to use, as one will much rather make use of multiple Pollux trees to dispose of toxic waste and at the same time produce more oxygen through the trees. Following next, the last requirement for proper life support will be a cryptosleep emergency area. Having multiple cryptosleeps ready for use at any time will become a life-saving factor in many situations. Sudden hull breach and oxygen is running out quickly? Cryptosleep until the mechs can fix it. Low on food due to a sudden shortage or malfunction? Cryptosleep. Low on water? Cryptosleep until the ship reaches a nearby planet where water could be gathered from, and so on and so on. Cryptosleep emergency caskets will provide a temporary but efficient solution to many problems, as they will increase the chances of survival of anyone, even during the most dire situations. Now we have finished covering life support. Our ship exists, people can live inside of it. Everything is good. The essentials are covered, and it is now time to optimize everything to guarantee a better quality of life and increased self-sufficiency and sustainability. It's time to talk about efficient resource management. First of all, water filtering. We have already mentioned how water is going to be very important in this scenario. Proper water filtering will be an absolute must. Gathering water for moisture, making water from showers drinkable or usable for plants, and building a closed-loop system will ensure that all the water used in life support, cleaning, and agriculture will be recycled without any waste. Any small leaks or water losses should be addressed immediately, while increasing the efficiency of water usage by setting timers on sinks, showers, and making use of dry sanitation, such as composting toilets. Following next, recycling. Although we just finished discussing water recycling, this should be addressed on a broader term. Anything that could be recycled efficiently should be recycled. Nothing should be thrown away. Old or malfunctioning tech, broken tools, and destroyed mechs will simply be repurposed or disassembled for parts, allowing the byproduct to be reused multiple times for other purposes, increasing the efficiency and optimizing the sustainability of the ship's resources. Power management is something that will be heavily addressed. In order to make the most of electricity and general power, various ways to ensure that power will be used only in times of need will be employed. Methods to achieve that will include reminders for the general public to turn off lights or unplug utilities when not in use, while a department of engineers will be tasked with monitoring power inputs and outputs to better optimize its usage. Division of labor will become a highly important subject to approach for an efficient resource management. People living on board of the ship will become resources as well, and they will be directly responsible for tasks best suiting their capabilities, creating a steady workflow in equal parts in order to boost productivity on board. A spaceship like that will require engineers, mechanics, plumbers, electricians, architects, mechanizers, cooks, researchers, smiths, crafters, and tailors in order to ensure the steady production of goods for the people living on board, or to achieve a high maintenance status. By dividing labor in equal parts, few people will become overworked, and increased rest will reduce the risk of accidents due to tiredness. Now that we have a spaceship that is not only capable of sustaining life and providing every comfort required, along with doing so in an efficient and optimal manner as to preserve as much power and general resources as possible, increasing its longevity and self-sustenance, extra resources will be diverted towards additional facilities that will further increase the quality of life on board. Properly advanced medical facilities will care for the ship's inhabitants more efficiently than a few doctors will, allowing people to be treated not only of advanced diseases but also creating a possibility to use biosculpting pods in order to reverse aging, increase mood, and treat wounds, along with regrowing small body parts lost in work-related accidents. Better medical facilities will also allow for more efficient disease treatment, reducing risks of pandemics that could potentially close off entire vital sectors. Mental health facilities, similar to medical facilities, will be required in order to prevent mental breakdowns or psychological issues from appearing. Recreation spaces, such as indoor gardens, bars, libraries, and so on, will serve to raise the general quality of life and mood of the public, allowing people to socialize and promoting a teamwork spirit and sense of unity. And it is likely that everyone's job is going to be important to a certain degree in order to keep everything running smoothly. Tech research centers could allow for the development of better water filtration techniques, superior oxygen production plants, and generally find improvements over time for anything on board of the ship, also creating a sense of development and evolution. But now we reach the top of the pyramid. Everything we have mentioned so far cannot work just by itself. While it seems logical that everything will work the way it does, it simply won't. A social structure will be important to maintain order and prevent everything from descending into chaos. A carefully developed law system will ensure proper and fair punishment for those whose actions will put the entire system at risk. Without rules, anyone will simply do whatever they want, and a spaceship meant to house an entire society will quickly descend into a free-for-all battleground and quickly into anarchy.
law enforcement will be required in order to prevent that from happening, requiring a jail or a method to rehabilitate criminals back into society, while everything will be led by a strict governmental structure. Given the universe of rimworld, it is likely that both the law system and the governmental structure will be led by an advanced AI, likely a Persona 1, the highest form of AI accessible to humankind before Architect. Persona AI are an ultra-tech type of AI whose intelligence can be compared to that of a human, but it's been stated within the Crypto Sleep Revival briefing written by Tynan that even the dumb ones are sometimes used to manage small spacecraft, meaning that managing such a large spacecraft will require the use of an advanced Persona AI or perhaps even multiple, each responsible for a different sector of the ship. While it wouldn't be an infallible machine, as Personae are known to sometimes make mistakes, they will still be superior choice to a regular human, as it is likely that they wouldn't be biased in their choice and will be capable of working constantly without requiring to rest. With all of this, my theory on how ancient housing spacecraft in rimworld would work is over. What I've talked about so far is a general idea which can be tailored to each civilization in order to better fit it. It is likely for the Empire's own spaceships to be roughly the same, with the exception that the government system will be clearly led by the Stellarch, and for the division of labor to be unfair, with slaves doing most of the physical and menial tasks while being granted less comfortable accommodations. I hope you enjoyed this big theory video. I know that most of this isn't canon, I just tried to use the little information I had in order to theorize how will such a spaceship even function. I will be curious to hear your own ideas and thoughts down in the description. I will also like to thank this channel's first members for their support. If you will also like to join and support me and my content, you can do so through the join button down below. With this, we have reached the video's end. Don't forget to like and subscribe as always, and I will see you within my next video. Have a good night.